of just three things: the pecans, the caramel, and the chocolate. We're going to make the caramels. First, we need to measure out all of the ingredients for the caramels. Let's get started. Our recipe calls for a cup of butter, so that is measured out. It also calls for 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. That is also pre-measured out. We need 1 cup of light corn syrup. I'm just going to squeeze it into this liquid measuring cup until it reaches the 1 cup line. There's the 1 cup line. That's all we need of the corn syrup. The brown sugar, the recipe calls for 1 1/4 cups packed brown sugar. I'm going to spoon it in and pack it down. There's our first cup of the packed brown sugar. Now I need another 1/4 cup. And I just put it in, and then with the back of my spoon, pack it down. There's our 1 1/4 cups brown sugar. The next thing our recipe calls for is 1 cup granulated sugar. With that, I just scoop it into the cup and level it off. Last, we're going to measure the vanilla. And that I want to put in another container because this spoon could tip too easily and I don't want to spill the vanilla. The recipe also calls for a dash of salt. When it's time to add that, I will just take my salt shaker and put a couple of shakes into it. That would be a dash of salt. We're now ready to go over to the stove and cook our caramels. We have our pan here. We want to turn the heat on to a medium heat. To this pan, we're going to combine the sugars, that dash of salt, and our butter. We're going to bring this to a boil over medium heat, stirring constantly. We do not want the stuff to be in one spot too long because then it could burn. So we're going to keep it moving. Right now it doesn't move that well because it's still very solid, but as it heats up and as the butter melts, it'll be easier to stir. Right now I'm doing more kind of a chopping because I'm trying to break the butter up. We're starting to get a little bit of liquefying of the sugars, but we still have a ways to go. Until all the butter melts, we know we're not done. So we want the butter to melt, the sugars to liquefy, and it to be boiling before we're done. And this whole time we are stirring it constantly so it will not burn. Now that we have it starting to melt down and become a little bit more liquidy, I can actually stir it instead of chopping at it. You can see that the sugar is pretty much dissolved in its liquid. We just have a little bit of butter still to dissolve, and of course we want it to come to a boil. Now as I stop long enough, you can see around the edges it's starting to boil, but it's not a full rolling boil yet. So we keep stirring till we get it boiling. Oop, it has just reached the boiling stage. Now we're going to add the corn syrup to it. We again want to stir it, and we want it again to come to a boil. When the mixture comes to a boil this time, we will turn the heat off to add the milk. As you look at it, it's starting to form bubbles. What we're going to do now is we're going to turn that heat off. And we're going to take our sweetened condensed milk. We're going to slowly stir this into that. So just pour a little bit in and then stir it. Remember, the heat has been turned off. If you're using an electric stove, you'll need to actually remove it from the plate because your plate will still be hot. That last little bit out of the can. With that stirred in, we now need to turn it back on to a medium-low heat, and we're going to stick a candy thermometer in there, making sure it is not touching the bottom, and we're going to cook it till the candy thermometer reaches 238, which is right around there. This time, we're turning the heat to a medium-low. The heat is not as high, but we are still stirring it. It will take a while for this to get up to that temperature. You just have to be patient. I usually pull up a chair and sit down because I know I'm going to be here for a while. The thermometer has reached 200 degrees. That means it's getting very close to the boiling stage. It's going to continue cooking after it starts boiling until we reach the 238 degree mark. That's the soft ball stage, and that's what we're going for, is soft ball. The reason that we have to stir it constantly, caramels have milk in it, and we do not want the milk to burn. We don't want it to burn on the bottom, so we're keeping it moving. And I like to always switch my hands back and forth on which one's stirring so that one does not get too tired. My thermometer says it is to the boiling point, but as you can see, it's not quite boiling yet. That would tell me that my thermometer is just a little bit off, so I may want to cook it a little bit longer than that to compensate for it not being on the right place. If you look carefully, you'll now see that some bubbles are starting to form on the outer edge and even coming up through the center. So we're starting to get it to the boiling. And it's going to do a nice rolling soft boil as it cooks the last bit. You can kind of see that boil now. That's what's going to help thicken up the caramels, is that steady boiling as it heats up. But I just keep stirring till my thermometer says 238. You'll notice it's come up quite a bit in the pan as it started boiling. We're at about 230, so we've got about 8 more degrees to go till it's at 238. So we're just going to continue to stir it till we reach 238. I'm keeping a very close eye on the thermometer because it's getting really close to that soft ball stage, which is what we're going for, 238 to 240. I am still stirring it constantly. This is what it looks like at 238, or the soft ball stage. You can't really tell without the thermometer, so you really need to make sure you use the thermometer. And I don't know if you can see that, but it is at 238. I'm now going to turn the heat off, and we're going to stir that vanilla in. If I were making just caramel candies, this is the point where I would now pour it into a pan to set up. But since we're going to be doing turtles, we're going to leave it in this pan for now, and I don't need to stir it anymore. We're going to let it cool just a tiny bit while we set the pecans up. While the caramel is cooling, we're now going to take our pecans and make the bodies of the turtle. What we do is we've got some arms, legs, and a head. We're going to do that all over the pan to make our turtles. We need to give a little bit of space between them, and I'm going to continue doing this till I have my pan full. I have laid out enough pecans to make 15 turtles. I'm now ready to add the caramel on top of the nuts. All I'm going to do is I've got my pan of caramel. I'm going to use my spoon and put it over the nuts like that. And I'm going to do that for all of them. This is the body. At this point, the caramel is very hot, so you do not want to touch it to adjust it while you're putting the caramel on. When it cools down before we pour the chocolate, if we need to separate some caramel because it's too close to the next one, we can do that. But right now, we're just spooning it on. And if for some reason the caramel starts to thicken up before we're done, all you have to do is heat it back up for a few minutes till it becomes soft again. I have one pan done. I'm going to now stick this in the fridge so the caramels can become hard, and I will continue working till I've made all the caramel part of the turtles that I want. I had some extra caramel because I didn't want to make that many turtles. You could make that many turtles. You could probably get somewhere between 75 to 100 turtles out of it, but I didn't want that many. So I took the caramel that was left and I poured it in a pan, and I just have caramels with it because caramels are good too. Before I melt the chocolate, I want to look at my caramels and nuts that have set up. Here's my pan, and you'll notice that these spread out a little bit. This is the time when I can bring that caramel in. Before I pour the chocolate on it, I can bring the caramel in to help give it back that turtle shape. I'm just going to go around to all of my turtles and push that caramel back in close to the body. But you can even bring it up on top of the body and give him a little bit more form on his body. Main thing is you don't want the caramel to be sprawling out. You want it close to the body. This pan is now ready for the chocolate. We are going to now melt chocolate and pour it on top. The chocolate we're going to use are chocolate wafers. I like using these because I don't have to temper it. They're very easy. We just melt them in the microwave. And this package gives the directions for doing it. It says that I'm going to cook in the microwave on half power, so 50%, for 30 seconds. And then I stir it, and then I continue to do it in the microwave at 15-second intervals, stirring in between each one. The easiest way to do this is to just put it in a measuring cup. I dump the wafers into the cup, and now I'm going to go microwave it just like I told you, 30 seconds, and then stir it. This is what it looks like after 30 seconds. It hasn't melted that much. Gonna stir it though, because the one thing about chocolate is it sometimes doesn't look melted, but it starts to melt. I'm now gonna put it back in the microwave, and because it really hasn't started melting, I will do it at that 50% for another 30 seconds. Here it is after another 30 seconds. This time you'll notice you're seeing some melting. There's still a lot that needs to melt, but I want to stir it before I do it again. All right, it's going to go back into the microwave again. Here's what it looks like before I start stirring. Now I'm going to stir it again. And as you can see, it is melting, but it's still not there. I'm thinking one more 30-second time and it'll be ready. Here it is, completely melted down. Now we're ready to put this on top of the turtles to complete our turtles. Here's our pan of turtles, and I'm just with a spoon gonna put that over and carefully take it all the way to the edge. I don't want a lot of extra on there, but I do want to completely cover my turtle. And now once that sets up, it will be done. I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the others. As you can see, I don't let too much go on at a time. I'd rather slowly add more to it so that the chocolate does not run all over. We have a little bit more control on the chocolate. So you'll notice I work with it with the spoon not totally tipped so that I can control the amount of chocolate I put on. As you can see, I've covered all of the turtles. Now we're just gonna let them set up. Once they're set up, we're done. If you're a little bit nervous about making the caramels, but you still want to try to do the turtles, you can buy caramels from the store and just melt them down. Won't be quite as good because the quality of the store-bought caramels are not as good, but you can do that. But be brave and try to make the caramel. For taking this class. In this class, we learned how to make chocolate caramel turtle candy. In this class, you were taught how to make caramels from scratch. We moved on to show you how to arrange the pecans for the turtles, placing the nuts in the right position to have the head, the arm, and the legs. I showed you how to pour both the caramel and the chocolate onto the nuts. Because homemade caramels become very soft when not in the fridge, it is recommended that you store this candy in the fridge. It can be out for a while, an hour or two, but for long-term storage, please store it in the fridge. I also recommend that you wait for your caramel to harden up a little bit more than I did. That way, when you put it on, it won't spread out as much, and you won't have to scoop it back up to the nuts as it cools down. You might have to reheat the caramel before you're done if it gets too solid. That is why I started with it not as cool as it probably should have, because I didn't want to reheat it. But it will be easier if you let it get a little bit cooler and a little bit thicker before you put it on the nuts. Your project for this class is to make some chocolate caramel turtles. Please be sure to post your projects in our class so everyone can see it. From my kitchen to your kitchen, happy baking.